Hello everyone, and welcome back to Acupuncture is My Life TV. Now in this episode, we're going to continue with our discussion on anxiety and how anxiety causes or can cause hair loss right after this message.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to download the Acupuncture is My Life app during the commercial break so that if you were to have any questions pertaining to this episode, I may be able to answer them in future episodes. But I'm glad to be in front of an awesome group right now. And of course, as you know, my sidekick, my right hand, Jackie's here. And then we have Elizabeth Madison, awesome, world-renowned registered dietitian and nutritionist. And then we have Liana, who's a trichologist and iridologist. But for this episode, she's going to focus on trichology, which is basically the study of disease or problems with a person's scalp and hair, and those that are facing hair loss. And in this case, it's hair loss that's tied to anxiety disorder. Now, as you all know, in part one of anxiety is basically a requirement. It helps us cope with stress. But once it becomes chronic, it can serve as a cause for disease. And in this episode, we're going to talk about anxiety relative to hair loss and ways in which you can adjust your diet. And you'll hear from a trichologist, as well as Jackie, who's a hairstylist as well, on things that you can do to reverse this. Now, I'll be speaking after this group discussion on how acupuncture can treat alopecia and really just work on the kidneys, because the state of a person's kidneys tends to reflect in the hair on top of their head. And many individuals don't understand that. But like I said, after the group discussion, I'll get heavily into detail about that and so forth and so on. But I want to start with Elizabeth and discussing ways in which you can change, improve your diet to sort of reverse hair loss, and certain types of foods that you can eat that can help with anxiety as a disorder. Talk to me, Elizabeth.
So thank you so much for having me again on your show. I love being able to talk to your audience about, managing their health, spirit, mind, and body, and there is a direct connection between anxiety and our health.
Right.
And hair loss is just an outcome, one of the many outcomes of not being able to cope with anxiety, chronic anxiety.
Right.
Now, we all know that anxiety is part of, nature. It's part of our natural response to things. It's when it becomes chronic, or when it becomes a mechanism for dealing with life in general. It becomes a maladaptive coping mechanism where we have to really manage it and take a look at it. And so as it relates to anxiety, food plays a critical role in how you manage anxiety. Yeah, absolutely. So because when I work with folks, I don't just look at their food intake, I also look at their state of mind, and they'll say, inevitably they'll come into the office and they're like, Elizabeth, I've had a bad day, I'm stressed out. And, when people can't manage their meals, their meal plans, I always want to go into, okay, what's going on with your head? Forget what's on your plate.
So
let's talk about
their shin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do that a lot too.
You have to. There are times when I've had nutrition sessions where I really even talk about food, because it's not about the food. It's about what's going on in their head, because what's going on in their head is going to affect what decisions they make about what goes on their plate. And if they're in a state of chronic anxiety, I would want to know more about what's going on. And I can do that because I have a 30-year background in clinical counseling. Now, also though, I tend to talk about the foods they eat, because the foods they eat can exacerbate anxiety. And so it just makes everything worse. So for example, refined carbohydrates, those are all the whites, the highly processed, ultra processed foods that we take in, the sugars, the salty sweet, the Doritos, things like that, the pastries. And cake is not evil, all right? But if you're eating sweets every single day, what happens is it creates very irregular blood sugars levels. So it causes blood sugar spikes, and those highs and lows create anxiety in your body, because your body's like, oh, did she just eat like 75 grams of pure sugar? Now I have to, gather all the forces to manage all this. And it creates more work for your body, and that creates anxiety. Yes.
It's so cool when you spoke about the types of foods, right? Now, as an acupuncturist, the flavors are super important. And you said like white foods. Now, white is tied to the lungs. And now, anxiety is a combination of emotions. It can be. Like, let's say, fear and worry.
Yes.
Now, worry is tied to the lungs, which white foods reflect the state of the lungs as well, your desire for it. And a person, let's say, when I spoke about how the kidneys, and its relationship to the hair on the top of your head, those that crave salty foods, it's a sign of kidney deficiency. Okay? So all of this is like tied together. Sweet foods, which is tied to the spleen and stomach, that the emotion that's related to the spleen and stomach is pensiveness. So this all works together. Like if you crave green foods, right, that's tied to the liver. Red foods is tied to the heart. So this is like, it's so awesome. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
But
that's
it's
okay.
it was the fact that you spoke about sweet foods and salty foods, or white starchy foods and things of that nature, and how it's all related from an emotional perspective. But go ahead.
So, but it's interesting that you say that. Why? Because, and I just want to clarify what I mean white, right? Because sweet potatoes, cauliflower, onions, mushrooms, those are the good whites, right? But I'm talking about the bad whites, the saltine crackers, those the potato chips, the snack foods that are just pure, unhealthy, things that we put inside our bodies that are just toxic, But the thing about it is, when you talked about the colors, right? The different colors of the foods that we eat have different properties. So, for example, the greens have a whole class of antioxidants that can quell anxiety, that can calm your body, calm your mind, that can regulate, create homeostasis. Even the healthy whites, they have a whole different classification of antioxidants that can heal the body. So we have to be very intentional about how we eat, because the colors do make a difference.
That's so awesome, because the thing here is, like, I look at the types of foods as part of like the diagnosis process. Yes. Whereas you use the foods to heal. Like, so when a patient speaks to me with regard to the types of foods they crave or they're eating a lot, it sort of gives me direction to which meridian has possibly been affected, and it's sort of out of balance from a yin and yang perspective. Whereas there's been times, and you know this, that once we start getting into or looking at using food as medicine, I'll send them to you.
Right.
Because that's your specialty. But I'm sorry.
No, but I want to go back to something you said, because we could do this all day, right? One of the things I wanted to say, I look at food. Could I ask people what they're eating? Because then we could diagnose them. For example, if I have someone who has, excessive intake of carbohydrates, all right, we automatically know there might be some insulin issues going on, insulin resistant issues, hyperinsulinemia, and that's going to affect literally every single system in their body. All right, and so just knowing what they're eating can give you that diagnosis. And the thing about it is, if we know that they're eating excessive amounts of salty foods, all right, one, what are the hydration issues looking like? And that affects other parts of the body.
That is so cool. That is so cool, because if they're eating excessive amounts of salty foods, I would know that there's a potential for a kidney path.
Absolutely.
That is so cool.
Absolutely. And then we know there's going to be some dysregulation with the heart and the kidneys, because the kidney and the liver, because everybody's now trying to filter out the excess sodium, and it just puts greater work on the heart. There's too many electric.
I gotta cut you off.
Yeah, I
know. with anxiety disorder, especially when it comes to hair loss, to an acupuncturist, that's heart and kidney yin deficiency, just like you said. Now, with acupuncture, yin and yang. Yin is heart, yang is kidney. That's fire and water. And those are the two key organs for life. But I digress. I want you to continue.
No, so let's talk about anxiety and how it manifests itself in hair loss.
Right.
All right.
Awesome.
Anxiety manifests itself in literally everything because it can create hormonal dysregulation. With the cortisol levels and the other insulin is a hormone, cortisol is a hormone, adrenaline is a hormone, and these things affect your body's ability to.
Where does cortisol come from? Which organ?
Go for it.
Kidneys.
Okay, exactly. I think it was a test, right? So just finished doing my finals this morning. I was like,
nice.
Oh yeah. So the key thing about it is we have these hormones that are at play, and our ability to grow hair, all right, comes from our homeostasis in our bodies, how our body systems are regulated. It comes from our sleep, and it comes from how we're managing our state of mind. That's why you see people who are under an enormous amount of stress, it never fails. They start waking up and they have clumps of hair in their hand. All right, there's more hair on their comb than before. Now, like, what's happening? Because stress will manifest itself in different ways. It can elevate blood sugars, it can elevate blood pressure, and long-term chronic anxiety can cause hair loss. And we see it all the time. And what it does is it literally stops the systems from growing hair, because and I'll have Leanna talk more about that because that's the expert, but we know that hair grows in cycles. All right, and so if you disrupt that cycle through what's going on with you emotionally, and the food you're eating exacerbates that, then you're going to have hair on the in your comb as opposed to on your head.
Yeah.
And so we have to take a look at what's going on to repair that system so the hair can start growing again.
Well, let me ask you. I have to ask Jackie. Like, when you're seeing clients, cases of, let's say, hair loss, do you sense there may be anxiety issues?
I usually ask them, have you had a traumatic event, loss, mass weight loss? And I would say 8 times out of 10, they would say, yeah, my mother passed away last spring, or I had a divorce last year.
Right.
Usually the answer will be some major loss, and again, I'm not a trichologist, but I have, I've cracked the code where, yes, your massive event hair loss is related to something another massive event in your life. So to connect all this today for me is such a great honor and blessing, so I can really understand what I'm saying.
Well, let me ask you this. Like, how, because doing what you do, you implement like some form of counseling. I mean, you're doing someone's hair
every day, all day.
What are some of the things you may talk to them about that you feel is beneficial to them, that may help them, that once they leave that chair, it's like, I made a change in their life?
I think usually relating to them.
Right.
Sharing that any event that you've gone through, maybe I've experienced it or someone close to you.
That's similar to theirs.
Right. And then when you talk it through with them, you feel a little bit of a weight has lifted off of them, and the connection is tighter. The trust is bigger, which is huge in our industry.
That's big.
For our guests to trust us to return past the four visit mark, which is our goal.
Right, that's a sign of trust.
It's a sign of trust. If they return after the 4th visit, they're yours.
Okay.
So things like that you want to, I feel like I'm a little bit empathic. So when someone's going through something and sharing with me, I will be right there with them, walking that journey for 45 minutes.
That's important.
And it's important. So, but I have a question about the word anxiety, which is really interesting. When you were talking, I've been meeting many people, and I work in Brooklyn, so I have this cross-section of everybody. And I feel like the word anxiety is being used so mainstream now. Like, oh my God, I have so much anxiety. Oh, my anxiety is crazy. And people are using this word now almost like a throwaway word. Are you putting anxiety on yourself by just using it as incorrectly almost? Or why are people using the word anxiety all the time now?
So this is interesting because there was an excellent article in the New York Times about that, how everybody's self-diagnosing themselves, and this really came to light during the pandemic, and people are trying to express what they're experiencing, and so the sense of dis-ease, the sense of uncertainty, the sense of doubt, the certain of where am I going? Why don't I have any control? That deep sense of that the ground is shifting underneath me and I can't get traction. That's what they're experiencing. So they know a word, anxiety, and so they pick on that word. But they don't really understand what it entails, how they can manage it, how it actually is created, and that there are different forms of anxiety, because anxiety runs along a spectrum. You can have acute anxiety, someone cut me off, I'm late for work, the Grand Central Parkway. But that's normal. Yeah. You can have, and anxiety could be good because it can motivate you, like, I gotta get my finals done today, and I'm gonna get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get them done, and so that anxiety can motivate you. But like you mentioned, when we have chronic long-term event-causing trauma, like anxiety, like the loss of a loved one, grief, a job loss, a pandemic, marital problems, all right? These things, these create that sense of dis-ease, that sense of loss of control, and that it doesn't go away. You wake up with it, you go to sleep with it, and sometimes it becomes so deeply embedded in your psyche that you don't even know it's operating behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But then it affects literally every single thing you do. Every decision you make when you're at the food store, how you engage your spouse, your co-workers, even how you sit and watch TV. And so they just have this generalized sense of, I am not grounded.
Yeah.
And the grounding, and goes back to my favorite Dr. Lott, when I see people who are not grounded, I'm like, have you seen an acupuncturist? Because that is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Because I think that the work that Dr. Lott does, it helps people understand that they are in a state of dis-ease, and is manifesting itself on the physical plane.
Here's what's awesome, is that on this episode we have a trichologist, and that's Liana. Now, of course, trichology has to do with the study of disorders or disease relative to the hair and scalp. And I've had 2 occasions, and I always mispronounce this compulsive disorder, which is a form of anxiety. I've dealt with patients that had trichotillomania.
Trichotillomania.
I always say it wrong, and then they look at me and they're like, I think you're pronouncing it wrong. But, I haven't seen many, but this is sort of like a compulsive disorder where a person feels the urge to pull their hair out. Now, what's your understanding as to the cause? What do you feel represents trichotillomania?
Well, also I'm an iridologist, which is interesting how I practice to get to the root cause, and part of that is being able to be like an ophthalmologist, and you look at a person's eye, it's actually like the optic nerve that you can see. So it lets me to be able to see what is going on with a client. They say it's, your eyes are the, your soul. But as a trichologist, so as a trichologist, it's like that's my, the organs is the body that I'm able to see. And through that, you can see systemic issues. And even emotionally, spiritually, and also you can see anxiety. And those tissue fibers tell us something. So trichotillomania, I have found, is that there's things from childhood. And a lot of times you have to have...
For years.
Yeah, so you have to, childhood issues. So sometimes, I have to have, just like yourself and Elizabeth, just to be able to have people, because I'm not a therapist. Sometimes you can have that time, but sometimes they need more. And a lot of times I will recommend groups. They have them on Facebook. There's one called Trick Body and Focus, and it's like a repetitive time, but sometimes people don't even realize they're doing it. And so sometimes I tell people to, find someone at work that you can trust, and you just ask them, say, do you see me touching my hair? And then also
they tell me about don't mind the spot, I pulled the spot out.
Right.
And it's a habitual comforting? Is it comforting?
Yeah, it's very comforting.
Yeah.
It's very comforting. So you can tell someone at your work and ask someone because they don't believe me. I'm a hairstylist too. So they say, oh no, I don't do that. Right. But then what happens is when you tell somebody and they don't even realize they're up in the couch and they're comfortable and they're like pulling their hair and they don't even realize that they're doing it. So it's someone that, I can do one thing, but a lot of times it has to be, it's a deeper core issue that they have to work with.
But when you approach it from the perspective of iridology, right? Like, what do you see? Like, what are some of the symptoms where you'll notice that a person is dealing with an anxiety disorder?
Well, it depends. That's like two questions, because if it's an anxiety disorder, you can look at the scalp. I have a trichoscope, which it shows inflammation. So you can see what the follicle is actually doing. Wow. So it also finds out, does it have sebum around it? Is there flakes and dryness? And you see that, I'm sure, as a hairstylist, and that you think, oh, okay, so there's the sebaceous gland is bringing up too much oils. So it's a matter of being able to find out is, it could be an autoimmune system. You can tell also because it is like the white blood cells attacking the hair follicle. So that's more of like alopecia areata, but that also is sometimes caused by stress, and that's when you have those patches. So it really depends on, there's like 8 different types of hair loss, so it depends on which one.
So when you speak of an overactive, let's say, sebaceous gland, right? It's making the scalp oily.
Exactly.
Now that's diet relative too.
Right. Well, you know what? It's just like the both of you talking about. Yeah, it's all connected because the same thing is that you got to remember what happens. It's like when somebody is stressed, what happens? The blood cells, it constricts. So what happens is it makes smaller. They're not getting the blood flow. You're not getting microcirculation.
Well, they go into a fight or flight state of existence.
Exactly.
Sympathetic.
But what happens is that you're not getting the oxygen, the flow. Right. It's almost like when those fluids are going there, where does it go? It goes to the skin, right? So what happens is that that's when you see people who are, young and they're aged, it's because they're not getting the oxygenated foods that they need. They're not getting the stress. So the capillaries can't feed the blood cells. So it ends up that they're not getting what they actually need.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm thinking so much. Do you think that there's more of a mass experience maybe around the world of hair loss amongst people, mainly women that do go on Sephora, onto these different, boards to complain about certain hair products, saying, we all experience this hair loss, and it's the product and it's not, but perhaps because of what everyone's gone through since 2019, maybe it's just like mass hair loss event, because I've been hearing more about it personally, but I've been hearing about it on a national level for different hair companies. And a lot of people that work with the companies are trying to say, no, it's more of an anxiety related hair loss that people are experiencing right now.
Yeah, there's so many different types of hair loss, and I'm just going to give you a couple of examples because I can go on for days. But it's just like even with men, it has a lot to do with people who, I get young people coming in, and they're wondering, why am I losing my hair? And they're, trying to get married. And unfortunately, the DHT, which is around the, the follicle, which is the papilla. So here you've got sebum surrounding, and the DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone, which is then affecting the hair growth. Yes. And what happens is with men, they have their testosterone, they have their testes, they have their sebaceous gland. With women, it's a little they have a lot. So what happens is guys who are working out, they're using more testosterone, right? So what happens is that, they need something to inhibit that hair growth. So they're coming in and they're using products that are like whey and creatine. And what happens is that I can tell the difference. Like if there's twins that walk in there and it's like the guy who is buffed, I know it's like, I can get your hair back really easy and recommend some proteins and just other diet related things that will not exacerbate this hair growth. But because of the products that are doing it, it affects the kidneys. Like, sometimes they don't even realize it. So there are so many things. It's not the product a lot of times, because even when people were going through it, it's called, which is the alopecia. It takes maybe 3-4 months after, like, someone's pregnant, which you see, you tell your clients all the time. What do you tell your clients when they're pregnant, right?
About 4 to 6 months, I call it the great shed. Right. And it happens every time.
Right. So, but there's a way to tell them to say it's called telogen effluvium and or diffuse alopecia. So what happens is that you can wait at least, tell them, keep on your vitamins after you have it, because your body is changing. And in some of those cases, some doctors may say, no, you're fine.
Do they want to remain on neonatal or switch to other?
Yeah, there's ones that are actually like a vitamin that really kind of helps with the hair. So that you've got.
Are you a biotin fan?
Not at all.
No.
Especially people
everybody uses biotin.
Especially people in New York. Our biotin is going to our stress.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't even get near to the hair.
Wow.
Yeah. So
my mind.
Yeah,
was just blown right now.
Yeah, because it doesn't even. It doesn't.
Turns to biotin.
Maybe biotin down in Alabama, but biotin in New York or up north. No, it's not going to work. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so cool, because I put tons of people on herbal formulas for hair loss. I mean, I'm glad I have such long flowing hair. I mean, I'm good. I'm all good.
I know.
But I have to ask Elizabeth, what types of foods would you recommend for women that are faced with hair loss issues relative to anxiety?
Oh,
I have to throw this in here. Also, foods that are good for anxiety.
Yes, so this is the thing. So I just want to go back to what you said, Leanna, because it was really important. You talked about this inflammation around the hair follicle, right? And
DHT.
The DHT. And we know for a fact that stress creates anxiety, and anxiety and stress creates inflammation. And so now you just share with me that, because I do a lot of classes around inflammation, but I focus on things like arthritis and diabetes, and because those are high blood pressure, because those are all inflammatory disorders. But I never knew that some of the hair problems can be created by the inflammation.
Right, because the nutrients have to get to the papilla. That's where you're going to get that's where it has to grow. And if you don't have oxygen flowing and cell regeneration, it's what we do all day, every day, is trying to help the body, have more oxygenation. But because what we're eating and our clients what they're eating, it's just that we have to show them another way, as far as just like the yin and yang. It's the same thing. What I study is parasympathetic and sympathetic, and which is foods that are cooling foods, so which are Vedic. So it's almost like live foods, celery juice, foods that are going to take that heat off. So when people are in a fight and flight, they're if they're in an acid. It's acid and alkaline, right? So it's just like being able to say, okay, now I need foods that are more alkaline, which is, your greens and all those vegetables. But what happens is sometimes people have been so acid so long, they become too alkalosis, which is not good. Right. And so sometimes it's just trying to find that balance. And that's what I, as a holistic practitioner, it's the whole body. And it's also the lifestyle. Right. And, that's why I call myself a lifestylist.
This is so awesome, because it's just all related. And it's like what you're saying, and how I say to the kidneys, when kidney yin, along with heart yin, become deficient, and then the heat just goes up. And you need cooling foods. When a person is yin deficient, yin tends to be cold. Yang is hot. So with yin and yang, as you can see from the logo, it has to be in balance. And when yin and yang is in balance, you have your homeostasis. But now when the yin, which is the cold aspect, becomes deficient, there's that excess heat. So now when you speak of the foods that's cool, the thermal nature, it's important.
Yeah.
It's super important. But I want to hear some foods.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it is all tied together. And so we have to look at the whole person, their whole lifestyle, everything. That's what I focus on, as an integrative and functional nutritionist, looking at how is their body, their mind, their spirit, their lifestyle, who their partners are, what kind of job they have. All these things play a role in it. And by the way, I am not a fan of biotin. Okay. Really, if biotin's going to make your hair grow, that's not the way it works. Right, it's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And also, Leah, I just wanted to share something about the whole alkaline thing. Again, people hear things on the media and they're like, okay, I'm just going to go buy a $3,000 alkaline water system.
Oh, I know.
And
yeah, totally.
Yeah, and like you don't understand exactly how the acid alkaline base balance in the body works, and it's so essential. But just drinking alkaline water is not going to get you to have this amazing optimal health, because that's not how it works. All right, because first of all, you cannot change the pH level of the blood, because if you change it just a little bit, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. Yeah. Right. So let's be clear about that. So just wanted to put that out. That's a whole different discussion. We can have another show about that. But the key thing, there are foods that can relieve anxiety. And so the foods very quickly that we don't want to eat, the ones that we know do increase anxiety, are the sugary foods, the refined foods, the fried foods. All right, those not only exacerbate anxiety, they make you feel drugged and tired, and they give you food fog, brain fog. Brain fog is like, and when you're not feeling sharp and clear in your mind, that also creates anxiety. All right, when you can't continuously find your keys, all right, is it dementia, or you just have too much anxiety, or you're just eating the wrong foods. All right, and so we need to move away from those foods and really focus on foods that help us minimize anxiety. For example, we know that foods that are high in magnesium really play a role in reducing anxiety. So for example, foods like leafy greens, all the greens, if it's green, eat it. Okay, spinach, my favorite, rainbow Swiss chard, which is in season right now. The collard greens, if it ends in greens, eat it. Also all beans, legumes. It doesn't matter. Black-eyed peas, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans. If it ends in bean, eat it, because your body loves you for it, because they're very high in magnesium. Nuts. I always tell folks, we love nuts us, but we have to moderate our relationship with nuts. So a quarter cup a day is max. A quarter cup measured, level, and not a handful, because then anything done to excess becomes error, and then it just creates more problems. So those are some foods. Foods that are also rich in zinc also help you manage. Now, I want to be clear when I say you have to let your pharmacy be the produce section or the farmer's market. Don't take these foods, or don't say, oh, Elizabeth, I'll just take a magnesium or a zinc supplement.
Yeah.
No, that's not, because the foods work, the nutrients that are in the food, they work with each other, and they work in sync, harmony with your body. What is in a bottle, in a capsule, sitting on the shelf for God knows how long, coming from God knows where, is not going to heal your body. So we're talking about the produce section as your pharmacy to heal your body and help you manage anxiety. So foods that are high in zinc, such as cashews, liver, egg yolks. Yes, eat the egg yolk. It's not going to kill you. Different discussion. All right. Then we have foods that are high in omega-3 fatty acids. Those are absolutely essential. They are.
Salmon.
Say again?
Yeah, like salmon.
Like salmon.
Right.
I always say, folks, what's it? Okay, pop quiz. What is a inexpensive fish source of omega-3 fatty acids?
Canned.
Tuna. Sardines.
So yes, sardines and tuna. Yes, if it's wild caught, and it's albacore. And these are excellent, inexpensive forms of
Mackerel.
Mackerel, absolutely. And so we really want people to realize, yes, you don't have to buy, get your omega-3 fatty acids, your fish oils in a bottle. Just have some salmon, have some sardines. I don't care how you like them, just eat them, it's fine. Just get them in your body. These are foods that you need to be eating regularly. And then also things like berries. If it ends in berries, strawberries, blackberries, cherries, raspberries, every time you eat a berry, you are decreasing inflammation, so that's contributing to managing hair loss. You're decreasing that anxiety that you're feeling, because berries just make you feel good. You know, they give you that calm sensation. I'm not sure, what kind of foods are berries? Are they...
Antioxidants?
No, because we have the heat foods, the damp foods.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cooling foods.
They're cooling, but now we're going back to color again.
Yes.
You see, because raspberries, strawberries is great for the heart. Blackberries and blueberries are great for the kidneys.
Right. And those organs play a critical role in managing inflammation. And stress, anxiety, and inflammation go hand in hand. And chronic anxiety causes chronic inflammation, causes dysregulation of every single system in your body. And that also ties back to the hair loss. So we need to have these kind of foods in our bodies, and because these will really, really help. So we have, also don't let me forget the spices. All right? Any spice, cumin, turmeric, ginger, the basil, oregano.
Is garlic part of that?
Garlic loves you.
Yeah.
Garlic loves you.
You always see that all over the internet.
Right. Now, again, I don't mean garlic that comes in a capsule. I mean fresh, organic, preferably garlic that you chop up and put into
never
everything.
have too much, can you?
Well, this is the whole thing. You know, it depends on someone's constitution. You know, I love garlic, but anything done to excess becomes error. All right. And yes, you may have a lot of garlic and you will be healthy, but you will be alone. Okay, because you will have it coming out of your pores, and people are like, whoa, are you killing vampires? What are you doing here? Right? So in moderation, I usually say a clove a day keeps the doctor away.
Oh, that's it.
Okay, just a clove, right? Because people are like, I'll eat 8 cloves. Not necessary. Okay, because then it becomes problematic for other reasons. So those are things that you can put in there. So the spices, because they have anti-anxiety and antioxidant and anti-anxiety properties. So the more you cook at home, the more you can explore with flavors. And I have on my website some of my favorite blends that can actually help manage inflammation.
I think it's really awesome you spoke of spicy foods, because spicy foods are great for the liver. And as I tell my audience in many episodes, the liver is responsible for the smooth flow of chi throughout the entire body. So when chi and blood is flowing harmoniously through the liver and the liver's balanced, everything flourishes, even your hair. So that was awesome. But you know what? I wanted to say thank you for coming out and speaking to my audience. And Jackie and I will be seeing you again in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again. It was just amazing having such a panel that you have put together here. You know, and there's so much to achieving optimal health, body, mind, and spirit, that is good that people who tune in can rely on evidence-based, information, credible information from experts, and people who really know their craft. Right. So thank you for that opportunity to join this panel.
You're welcome.
And Liana, I want to thank you so much in bringing your expertise to the show. Jackie would love to thank you as well.
Yes.
And I'm sure my audience will benefit from the wealth of knowledge you've impugned on them relative to hair loss. And I hope to see you again on a future episode. Okay?
Okay, sounds great.
Be well.
Thank you. I've been living this life for 40 years. So it's just now, because of COVID, I've become to be in style. And,
nice.
I've written books to help my clients. I even have one for people who have hair loss, so they can do a self-assessment.
What's the name of it?
It's just got hair loss from inside and out.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah,
Can you find it on Amazon or anything like that?
No, I don't have any of my things on Amazon. On my website, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
On your website?
So yeah, on my website.
What's your web address?
LianaLifestylist.com.
Nice.
Yeah,
You
or
guys
your
hear
own
that?
uniqueness.com.
I'm going to go tag it on my Instagram, guys. So
Nice.
look for it, too.
Nice. That's good. Well, thanks.
You're
again.
welcome.
It was a pleasure
And I
having
look
you.
forward to, it's so nice to meet you also,
too.
Jackie, and we'll be able to definitely talk hair and all that kind of stuff. So
Awesome.
great.
And you guys will be back after this commercial break.
Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life. Acupuncture is my life.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you were able to gain something from this group discussion. And I want you to remember, never allow anxiety to become a disorder by carrying it on too long, because it can result in something far worse than hair loss. So if you ever notice yourself carrying anxiety for an extended period of time, see an acupuncturist, because acupuncture is my life. What's yours?
Acupuncture is my life. 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 Acupuncture is my life.